Whether you're conquering professional exams or personal milestones, we welcome you to Beyond Clean's Confidence Certification, the 52-week test prep podcast series. With expert insights, actionable tips, and engaging discussions, we'll break down the toughest concepts in sterile processing and build your confidence every step of the way. Join host Sarah B. Cruz as she embarks on a mission to help you not just prep for tests, but craft your success story. And now your host, Sarah B. Cruz.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Confidence Certification, a 52-week test prep podcast series to equip you to take your sterile processing career to the next level. I'm your host, Sarah B. Cruz, and on this episode, we are going to dive into the world of language barriers. Now, I have two special guests with me today that are going to help me understand what it's like being a professional that has English as a second language or being an English language learner in the sterile processing space. I think this is an important aspect to our test prep conversation because the definitions and the terminology in sterile processing are difficult as it is. I mean, can we talk about the word glutaraldehydes for a second? Like, I can barely say that, right? I can only imagine what it translates into. So I want to make sure that we're bringing all the tips, all the tools, and everything that all sterile processing professionals need to take their certification test confidently. So please help me welcome Miss Angie Holland and Nestor Hernandez. Hey guys, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you all again. Just to let you know, Angie and I have decided that Nestor lives in airports. So he's joining us. Yeah. So he's joining us from multiple sites, and it's really nice to be able to have this one spot to go to. And I'm hoping that a lot of our listeners feel the same way, that they have a go-to space on the podcast world to just be sterile processing professionals or future sterile processing professionals and feel like they're being helped out while they get ready for their test. So just really quick, Angie, how long have you been in sterile processing?
23 years.
And Nestor, how about you?
43 years.
Oh my goodness. All right. So I'm the baby of the group. All right. So and if you guys had to pick the best way that you learn, what would you say your study style is, Nestor?
My study style is being by myself, put myself on timeout in a little corner. Because when you were talking about some of the words, I remember trying to even say Geobacillus stereothermophilus, or even trying to say Gio, ese es mi primo, that's my cousin, And I'm like, why are they talking about my cousin, Gio? Gio's not here. ¿Dónde tú estás, Gio? It was crazy. And 43 years later, probably I'm saying it right. I don't know. So just studying all of that was so difficult. So I chopped the word up and I associate it with, my cousin Gio, and I'm not an individual to be able to study in a group, and it's kind of weird because I was an introvert and now I'm an extrovert, give me a mic, put me on the stage and forget about it.
The show is on.
But before I had to just, be on my own, study with cards and write it over and over again and read it out loud. If I read it out loud, it kind of stuck to my head,
Angie, it sounds like you did something similar. Did you experience the same, is frustration the right word with trying to take your certification test?
I don't think it's so much the frustration. I think it's a challenge for us. So we know we have to go that extra step. But I agree with absolutely everything Nestor just said. That's what I used to do. Kids were in bed. Mommy was in a room. It's quiet. And I literally rewrote these books because you put pen to paper. That's how you remember. And if I didn't understand a word, I would translate it into Spanish and then try to understand what that word meant to then make sure that it made sense to me. So exactly what he said, I can't study in a group. I have to read out loud.
So it sounds like you all are talking about additional steps where primarily it's just, I don't want to say just, excuse me for minimizing it, but it's primarily taking a word, translating it to Spanish, so then you can learn what it means in English. Or do you explain, or do you try to translate the explanation in Spanish and then translate that to English? What's that process like, trying to take a word that we don't know in one language to another?
I think I do both.
Oh, okay.
I do both because I need to understand what the word means in Spanish and to make sure that I get the context in English. But our parents were great, and when they would punish us, they would just like use the word in syllabus. Yo te dije que no hiciera eso, right? Like that. So that kind of helped us study. Am I wrong, Nestor?
Yeah, no,
like
you're absolutely right.
That helped us break down these words.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think with me, it was my biggest challenge was that we were not allowed to speak English at home. You know, Spanish only. You know, mom would say, you only speak Spanish here at home. When you go to school, then you can learn. And I think that was a great tool. I think I really do think so, because now I'm versatile from English to Spanish, and I could read it, and I could do both languages. I could read it, I can write it, I could understand it in my head, you know. So I thank my mom for that. But at the same time, it did not give me an opportunity to practice with someone. And me being an introvert all the way through my high school, I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't talk the new language that I was learning. I couldn't practice with someone because when I got home, it's Spanish only. So a lot of my siblings would go to the bedroom and we would whisper in English. We would talk to each other in English, you know. And you could hear mom in the back, you know, I told you not to talk in English in the house. And so on and so on. But, you know, overall, the end result of all of that, for me, it's been great. It really has been great. It was difficult at the beginning, but again, the end result has been phenomenal.
And I think that that's an important thing to touch on, just because I used the word initially frustration, and I appreciate that I can understand more now that it was more of a challenge that seems to have positive outcomes. As much of a challenge as it was, it seems like there's an overall appreciation for being able to work in sterile processing in multiple languages, which is great, you know, especially in America where we don't have a national language or like a deemed language that we speak in you know, the country. Me personally, we have a lot of Polish in the area that I'm in. So Spanish too, but primarily Polish, especially in my work area. And if I can be so brave to say, probably more predominant than English in the area of the United States that I'm in. And it's interesting to hear Polish on the work floor, right? And it's interesting to hear Polish and then English words because they don't have a word for it in Polish. So it's almost like these native speakers, I guess like we call it Spanglish, yeah? So it's like you speak one language, jump into another language to explain the thought. Does that happen? Have you guys ever experienced that where like there's just not words for the words in the textbooks that you guys are trying to learn?
I think that happens in Spanish in general,
okay.
like with the different dialects. And it's ironic, but you'll see reels on TikTok and stuff where, you know, you have the different cultures and they're explaining different words. And Puerto Ricans are the only ones that have a very specific dialect to Puerto Rico. Oh. There are words that are only used in Puerto Rico and are not used anywhere else. Huh. So you see that within Latinos. But say when we're frustrated, the Spanglish completely comes out. So you're gonna get, you know, that Spanglish sentence, and they're able to catch that. But you do see, and you see that on the working floor a lot with the different nationalities too.
And I think what makes it very challenging as well, like when you are reading something in English and Spanish is actually backwards. You
Oh,
know,
that's right.
it's backwards. In Spanish, it's actually, not, it doesn't sound right. It's backwards, but it really is. It's backwards. And you're going to have a lot more words to say something real simple in English, That's why I keep saying when I talk in Spanish, it's going to take me maybe 30 minutes longer to express what I would say in English.
And just to elaborate a little bit more, when Nestor's speaking of backwards, so in English, we would say the green shirt versus in Spanish, it's la camiseta de verdes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, see, here we go.
Yep.
Kind of getting it.
I always tell the story about my dad going to the store and buying a paper toilet because he doesn't, and he's been here for over 20 years, but it's kind of like it's just in your head and you forget that you have to like flip the words to know, to say it properly. People kind of get used to it.
Wait, so does that mean it's not sterile processing? Does that mean it's processing sterile? Or I feel like this is blowing my mind right now.
So let me tell you about the title for the facility. So it's Departamento de Procesamiento Estéril. The word estéril has multiple meanings. Mm-hmm. So they're actually working to change it across Latin America because there's different names. And so it's easier to be translated into English.
So when I speak to someone in Spanish, and actually just yesterday, I was sitting at the bar, not drinking. All right, let me clarify that. Right? Not drinking. And there was I'm in Miami. So in Miami, everybody talks Spanish over here, So I was having this great conversation with this couple. One of the things that they wanted to know was, what do I do? So when I told them that I work para el Departamento de Esterilización, and that's the way it should be, right? The Sterile Processing Department, Departamento, here's the backwards, right? Sterile Processing Department, Departamento de Esterilización. And when I said that, they knew exactly what I was talking about. So
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be.
Because I know it's being abbreviated now in Spanish as DPE.
Mm-hmm.
Departamento de Procesamiento Estéril.
Right, they have procesamiento estéril.
Mm-hmm.
Estéril is, when you say estéril, tú eres estéril, that means you can't have a child, It's
yes, exactly.
It doesn't make no sense. So when I said it that way to them, they knew exactly what I was talking about. It was very simple. Imagine me telling them, procedimiento de estéril. It's like, it makes no idea. Sense. It should be.
I love that.
El Departamento de
Esterilización. I love.
And that's insightful too, because, we have where, there, two, right? And it's refreshing to hear that that's even happening in multiple languages. So because I know from what I've heard, English is a very difficult language to learn because we have a lot of words that mean different things and different contents, and especially with our conjunctions and the way that we conjunct and then use pronouns to define words instead of last letters in words like O versus A in Spanish, and I think from what I've heard that is what makes English very difficult to learn. So as a professional or someone studying for their test that has English as a second language, or they're an English language learner, it must psych them out. They must feel really confident about what they know, especially if they're already in the field, that it must psych them out and almost kind of discourage them. And then imagine that energy when you're not even in the field yet. So you don't know how awesome you are yet, because we all know sterile processing professionals are awesome, right? So
sure we are.
Yeah, we are. So how can we help boost these professionals, the future of the sterile processing industry, so that they don't psych themselves out?
That's a tough one. Mm-hmm. Because I've recommended having sub podcasts and information and audio. It's one thing to read a question and try to now translate what the there and there meant. And it's another thing to hear the question. And then, you can understand it better. So, I've always said that's one of the options to have, but I also always recommend have one of those AMP posters in your house, the anatomy and physiology posters.
Oh, okay.
Or A lot of facilities have, the posters on how to read printouts and stuff like that. Even taking a picture of stuff like that you can study at home, that could be helpful.
And Nestor, is there, if you all have had the opportunity to hear Nestor speak, he is so overwhelmingly motivational in any language that he's giving the presentation. And, he could speak Spanish the entire time and I'm going to feel motivated to jump out of my seat without knowing half the words. You know what I mean?
Or cry.
Right? Oh my God, he gets me so teary-eyed. The reason why I bring that up is because, Nestor, before we move into our little break and hear a word from our sponsor, is there any motivational tool or tip you can give that would help, break that psych out that maybe they're experiencing while they're studying?
For me, it always starts with you, do you believe that you have the ability to do what others see in you that you can't do? Do you have that? Because that was me, and you just gave me the mic and I could just keep talking about that, but I won't, I promise you. But that was me. As being an introvert, that I always thought, I can't do that. I'm not good enough. I'm struggling. I can't even speak in English. I can't even write. I used to say, instead of saying ask, I used to say ax. And that was so challenging for me. And people would look at me like, what is wrong with you? What country are you from? But it's all about, just searching inside of you. What is that passion, and believing that and I'm a strong believer in always saying this, believing that you were created for a purpose.
Yes. Believe in yourself.
You're created for a purpose, that you're in this earth for a purpose, and once you tap into that, and that's what I did, I stopped listening to the voice of family members saying, you are not worthy. You are just like your father. And my father was a loser. And I'm going to say that you want to cut that out later. That's fine. But my father was a loser. Not that he's going to hear this.
You're amazing, Nestor. You are. I have to say, I'm a total introvert myself. And speaking, and Sarah knows, speaking for me is challenging. Even going to HSPA for the first time was challenging for me. And I had a hard time. And once I heard you speak, I was like, I want to be just like him.
Oh, that's
right.
So, thank you.
You are unbelievable. And you have a way to engage the audience that just I have never seen before. So other than with Sarah,
you guys really are good to me.
You're really like, you're amazing.
And you know what? You don't go to school for that. You don't learn that in a textbook. That's all inside of, it's all in you. And you got to tap into that and believe that you have the ability to be the best technician that there can be. Believe that you're going to pass that test or you're going to get your certification. Even if you have to take it 20 times, you're going to pass that certification. And once you tap into yourself that you can, I can, yo puedo, you're going to be so successful, And when I mean successful, it doesn't mean you're going to travel the world, be in hotels and speak and amazing platforms. What I mean being successful for me was I passed the test.
Yeah, that's a success right there.
After taking it several times, I passed the test. And for me, that was successful enough.
It's all in believing in yourself, because once you start believing in yourself, you're going to put the time into studying that book because you want to demonstrate. It's like I say, it's a challenge. We want to demonstrate that we have that capability. So once you start believing I can do it, you will do it.
So let's carry that momentum and we'll be right back after this short break and a word from our sponsor. It's time for our mid-episode confidence boost, where we focus on a key sterile processing test concept. Now, there's no guarantee these concepts will be on the test that you take, but they are key concepts to the workplace and are discussed in the literature. Today, we'll discuss quaternary ammonium compounds, or Quats. Quats are low-level environmental disinfectants that are effective against gram-positive bacteria, but ineffective against some gram-negative microorganisms, lipids, viruses, and spores. Some are effective against TB. Quats are bactericidal and are used for inanimate environmental surfaces. Relatively non-toxic to human, but they are corrosive to metal, like our surgical instruments. Items they're usually used on must be cleaned beforehand because quats are inactivated in the presence of organic matter. It's important that quats be mixed according to the manufacturer's recommendations because they are ineffective when too weak or too strong. They are typically mixed with distilled water. The concentration of the disinfectant is quickly depleted in hard water, and when cotton or cellulose-based materials are used in conjunction with the cleaning and disinfection process, the concentration is also affected. That's going to wrap this week's mid-session confidence boost. Good luck. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. If you are just joining us, why are you joining in the middle of an episode? Go ahead and restart this episode. It's episode 32, okay? Because you don't want to miss the amazing motivational nuggets and the practical tips that have been shared in the first part of this episode, where we are talking about English as a second language and being an English language learner while trying to prepare for your certification test, or even being in the sterile processing field. Before we went to break, Nestor offered us some amazing motivational and inspirational knowledge that I personally think he's been known for in my own experience. And he said something that really resonated with me. He said, you can't learn that. You don't learn that from a book. And that is so overwhelmingly powerful. And I think that that message, even though you are studying from a book, maybe you're making flashcards, maybe you're trying to find the word that's in English in your native language and it does not exist. But keep in mind that while you study, if you have confidence in your end product, which is you, as Nestor pointed out, it will be so overwhelmingly motivating to help you stay focused when language gets you frustrated or is more of a challenge, right? That was my overwhelming impression. And, you know, speaking of impression, I want to talk a little bit about multicultural representation in the sterile processing industry. So speaking of impression, I want to talk a little bit about multicultural representation in the sterile processing industry. Being somebody who is predominantly Irish, I feel like I look out into the space and there's a lot of people that look like me, that speak English like me. I feel overwhelmingly represented in the space. Now, I can't help but feel like that may be lacking in other spaces. I don't know, Angie, what do you think?
I believe it definitely is lacking. I think that SPD is one of the most culturally diverse departments. And it's a great opportunity also for leaders and for other technicians to learn about the other cultures, you know, because we learn to interact with them. We have our, you know, pot roast lunch where everybody brings a different dish. So you eat that different food. But there are multiple nationalities in the industry that are very bright and know their stuff very well. But because of their accents, they don't get involved in the industry. So that to me is why I feel that they're not as represented, because they hold back due to that accent. And what I say to that is, forget your accent. You know your stuff. You can deliver the information.
That's so insightful. I loved that you shared that because I'm from Connecticut. And so you either sound like you're from Massachusetts or you sound like you're from New York. Like I say coffee, like CAWFEE. And that's the least of my worries, it sounds like. Nestor, what do you think?
So I got a quick short story, even though my stories usually are not short. Right?
They're great though.
So I remember showing up to a facility where I was hired to be the manager, and the department was represented by just one coacher. That's it. And when I got there, it wasn't my goal wasn't to mix it all up. It just happened. It really did. And I remember we had like 12 positions available. I went to a local college that was putting together the CRCST prep course, and I helped them write it, and I helped them put the course together. And at the end of the first year, they invited me over to interview the first graduates. And I hired 12 to 14 of the very, very first graduates.
Wow.
They all showed up all on the same they all had the same hire date. Now, when they showed up, the existing staff felt like I was hiring my people.
Oh.
And that's exactly what I was told. So we had, a mixture. The department became a multicultural department. There were Africans, there were Cubans, there were Colombians, Dominicans, Americans, you name it. It was a beautiful mixture of languages and color. Man, the salad just became better, right? The way I put it. But the challenge was the existing staff now felt threatened. Okay? It happens. And I had employees that would come into my office. Anyway, make a long story short, one thing that I did so that we can mix besides, the food from different culture, we would do a siesta every day around 12 o'clock. From 12 to 12:15, I would walk into the department with my big radio, and we would play some salsa music. And so we're going to do some salsa dancing right in the middle of the department, right? And I'm serious about it. And we would play the music and we would start dancing. It was our break. This is our 15 minutes break, and you all had to take it together. And we would dance. We would mix it. By 6 months later, man, the morale in the department changed. Everyone was getting along until one day the siesta ended, right? When we were dancing. I remember I was dancing with one of the employees and I gave a little twist. And when we turned, there's our VP standing right by the door. And he just, Nestor, may I talk to you, and even though I explained to him the success behind the approach of mixing the culture so that we can build that team as one team, we had to stop the salsa dancing. We did. We had to stop. But by that time, we reached the plateau, the goal, what we wanted to do. And you know what? That was probably maybe 15, 16 years ago. And do you know that I still talk to half of those people? And right now, a lot of them are in leadership, supervisors, managers of organization. Man, the success, right, of looking at the multicultural, but not limiting, what you could do with a great salad bowl. I just got to put it like that.
Yeah.
And I think that highlights the main reason why this topic of conversation, this episode on confidence certification is so important. And it's because we want to bring to light the realities that all of sterile processing and the professionals who are going to join us. We can't wait to see you in your department, by the way. Come hang out with us. We do have potlucks, and I've never been in a department that salsas, but that's probably for the best of everybody. You don't want to see me bachata, you know what I mean? So, but at the same time, this episode is to demonstrate that if you're experiencing these roadblocks or these mental psych outs that you can't, it's to show you that you can. And I want to make sure that you're not just mentally in that spot to know that you can, because I already think you're great. Come hang out. But let's give our listeners some real actionable tips. Angie was talking a little bit earlier about maybe hanging a anatomy and physiology poster with all the different body parts and mechanisms translated in Spanish. Angie, you got anything else like that the listeners can take away with them?
I utilize a book that translates medical terminology from English to Spanish, from Spanish to English. I mean, it's not, it's a great tool. So I can't just, I translate a lot, but I can't just translate from what I know. I have to translate from what's accurate and what's correct. So I do use that a lot. I use the posters and, translating that. I use a lot of content that's out there and I translate it for people because it helps. It helps and I want to see them succeed. But going back to Nelson's point with the salsa, what I used to do is every day, every technician will have control of the radio. You play your music. So tomorrow we play the next music. We weren't dancing. That would have been great though. But because I had Haitians, I had Africans, I had Jamaicans, you have everybody in SPD. I mean, I've worked every hospital in Massachusetts, I swear. And now I'm in New Hampshire. So that does help because it unites them. Because now the person that doesn't speak Haitian, they want to ask that Haitian tech, hey, what's that song talking about? Because I like the beat, but I want to know what it is.
I find out for me was when I am speaking to my staff in the workplace, I speak to them in English, but I speak so that they can learn it. But I take my time speaking to them slowly. I don't go through it really quick so that they could hear what I'm saying. And then I ask them to repeat it back. Okay, did you understood what I said? Go on ahead and repeat it back. But I do it on one-on-one because I learned that when I did my huddles, if I did that and you put someone on the spot that's struggling with the language, they became that introvert that I was, and I understood, what it is to be, that introvert that you want to say so much, but do I say it in Spanish? Do I say it in English? How do you say it in English? I apply, who I was and how I learned the flashcards too. So I would create flashcards, English on one side and then on the other side in Spanish. I also did, Angie, the anatomy. I would take a board and I would have the anatomy there and then the whole skeletal structure, and then I would pick a surgical procedure of the day and I would break it down from, this is the first step, this is the next step, so on, all in pictures in English, but then I would also write it in Spanish. So on one side it was in English, on the other side it was in Spanish. So, but the challenge was if you understood it more in Spanish, I want you to go to the English side and read it. Challenge you, so that you could, read both, but I want you to stay more on the English side because, unfortunately, in the workplace, English is the
dominant language, 100%.
English is the first language. So, and you hear people say, you're in America, you should be speaking in English, not Spanish. So I wanted them to feel comfortable. So the material, I actually taught the certification course for almost 9+ years in Pennsylvania. And I had a lot of Spanish speaking individuals, but the material was not available in Spanish. And so I would do the class in English, but if they were struggling, then I would do a one-on-one, and I kind of took the whole material and translated it to Spanish. And I would sit there and go through, read it in English, and then I would say it in Spanish, but out loud. And I would have them read it in English, and then I would respond in Spanish. So all kinds of different tools. And all of those technicians today, the oldest technician, I just saw him last week because I was up north. He just turned this month 65 years old. From Puerto Rico. When he came to apply for a position, that was his biggest concern, the language. And I'm an old man, he said. And I go, don't worry about that. You could do this job. And today he is loved. He is amazing. And when we call, when we talk to each other, he goes off in Spanish and I'm like, nope, bring it back down. Come on, let's talk in English. Don't lose it. Don't lose it. So
Spanish, the dialect is very similar to Portuguese and Italian. So it's not just one nationality or one, Latin America that can respond to that or learn from that. You also have the Portuguese, the Brazilians, and Italians that all have a very similar dialect.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that when Nestor was speaking about the one-on-one learning, that mirrors a lot of the support I tried to provide a Vietnamese colleague who was trying to pass the certification test. We actually utilized a recorder, and they would speak in their native language into the recorder and explain a topic to them, right? And then I would have them explain it to me in English, and they would explain it to me in English. And I said, does the way you said it on the recording match the way you said it to me in English? And she would say yes or no. And if it was no, I'd say, okay, what's missing from the two of them? And then we'd actually dive into the certain words, words that didn't exist in her native tongue. And then after that, the concepts, because a lot of the times when the core word is missing, the concepts like dynamic air removal is something so robust that you have to take it that far back, so it's trying to figure out what the words are in the first place and then explaining that aspect. So it was a nice little combo. It was nice to hear you say, doing that one-on-one and almost like providing an ESL sterile processing course or an ELL sterile processing course. And I think, Angie alluded to the fact that she does that one-on-one with people when they reach out to her asking her certain topics. So it sounds like a lot of this is really reciprocal and collaborating. And I think that this is great, and as we move into the end of the episode, I assign homework. I know. I'm one of those. Everybody gets homework, but I'm not going to give homework this episode because I don't want to be the bad guy. Instead, I'm going to ask you two just what is one thought-provoking question or a simple task that you can give to our listeners that would help them with this topic? What would you give them for homework? Nestor, what do you think?
I think for homework, my homework to our guests would be going back to what I said from the very beginning. Study within yourself. What is it that you want out of life? Right? I mean, this is just in everything. My homework is, studying me. What is it that I want out of life? And what you put into the work, right, of me, is what you're going to get out of it. If sterile processing is the field for you, and I say if, because sometimes, we get in there until I find something better. I got in there while I was going to college, to be an architect. And here I am, 43 years still doing this. Why? Because it became a passion, right? Una pasión, a passion, una pasión, a passion to do better for others. So my homework to you is, I'm not going to tell you to get into the books. You're doing that already. I'm not going to tell you get the flashcards out. You're doing that already. I'm not going to tell you do study groups. You're doing that already. You need to stop and study you and figure out whether or not this is what you really want to do. Is it your passion? And if this is your passion would lead you to do what the next step is. But you got to believe in yourself. Don't do it because mom is telling you to do it because mom is a nurse and no, my mom thought that I was going to be a nurse when I told her, because mom is a registered nurse, retired. And mom, when I told her, Mom, I'm working in the hospital. Oh, mi hijo va a ser un enfermero. No, Mom, I'm not going to be no doctor. I'm not going to be none of that stuff. I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. Well, here I am. So that's my homework to you. Be who you believe that you're going to be. But to do that, you got to study yourself and apply all the necessary tools. And if you need help understanding what that is, Sarah's here. Angie's here. I am here. Podcasts are here to help you take you to the next level. That's my homework, my assignment to the listeners.
I'm just going to add on to Nestor's and say, stop listening to what everybody else has to say. Because only you know yourself. Only you know what you are capable of doing. What everybody else is saying to you is irrelevant. That's their opinion, their perception. You're your reality. And, that's the most important thing. To keep in mind that you can do this. You got this.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And though that is awesome homework, I'm usually like, make a list. How about we do some columns, So I think that was an awesome homework assignment. If you're listening in and you're ESL or ELL, or if you are not experiencing this reality, you can still take that homework assignment and run with it, because really, you're going to be running in the department when that phone rings. So you might as well start practicing now. Angie, Nestor, thank you so much for joining me today on Confidence Certification. And we can't wait to see the outcome of this motivational and positive episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Bye.
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 And that's going to do it for this week's episode. For more sterile processing education and resources, make sure to visit beyondclean.net or follow Beyond Clean on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget to check out over 1,000 SPD related videos at youtube.com/beyondclean. If you have any questions or comments for the show, you can reach out to info@beyondclean.net. Finally, make sure to download the Beyond Clean mobile app on the Apple and Android app stores so that you don't miss a future episode of any of the other awesome Beyond Clean podcasts. My name's Sarah B. Cruz, and you've been listening to Confidence Certification. Until next time, keep fighting dirty and pass that test with confidence.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast series are of Sarah B. Cruz only and do not represent the companies she works for or collaborates with.